Well, that's the final signature on 4 pieces of legislation. I'm here on Monday, May 3rd, at my desk at City Hall and doing something that I rarely do. In fact, I can't even think of one time in the almost 7 years I've been mayor where I've actually signed legislation on a Monday, where I typically sign legislation on a Friday. But I'm doing it to emphasize a point and to underscore why not only I'm enthusiastic about the legislation I just signed, but by a lot of the progress this city has been making in the last number of years on this topic. San Francisco has led the way in things like universal health care, universal preschool, and the budget I'll submit on June 1st will be almost 100% there at the end of next fiscal year on universal after school. Some wonderful and extraordinary programs that I think reestablish San Francisco as a progressive city in terms of advancing our social values. But we also are a city, and this is my point, that doesn't get the kind of attention I think it deserves in terms of being fiscally prudent. Now, I know some people are saying that's ridiculous. Well, hold on. Let's just consider a number of facts. The fact is San Francisco has balanced its budgets without general tax increases and without substantial borrowing or any significant borrowing whatsoever. We've been able to do that by maintaining a relatively strong bond rating, a bond rating, incidentally, that as other cities have seen theirs reduced, has been reaffirmed even as early as just a few months ago, because we have been relatively prudent in terms of our fiscal investment. I've always believed that you can be progressive without being profligate, meaning you can advance your progressive values without breaking the bank. And this city, we've been able to do that, working together over the course of the last number of years. Here's why: because we've led the way in terms of financial reform, in terms of budgetary reform. We're a city that has a pay-as-you-go requirement. We're a city that has a rainy day reserve. We're a city that has efficiency plans and strategic planning elements that are required in our charter. We're a city that has done a very good job in terms of making long-term investments. And those investments, incidentally, are being reinforced here today. Let me give you an example. I just signed the new 10-year capital plan for our city. It includes $26.9 billion of identified investments that we believe we should make, prioritized over the next decade. That plan includes the generation, literally, of thousands and thousands of jobs on an annual basis, cumulatively tens of thousands of jobs over the life of that 10-year cycle. What's significant is a number of years ago, we didn't even have a 10-year capital plan in the city. It was because of the leadership and stewardship of Supervisor Sean Ellsberg and other supervisors that we established a 10-year capital plan. This year, with the leadership of the board and the same supervisors that supported the origination of the 10-year capital plan, we're also supportive of this year's 10-year capital plan update, including the president of the board. We are continuing in that tradition. But it's a tradition not just of paperwork, meaning it's not just a plan. It's a plan that over the last number of years we have fully funded. And that's the significance of today, that we are also submitting my, proposed May budget. And this is a budget that is required of all the enterprise departments. We talk about the June 1st budget. That's for general fund supported departments. This May 1st budget that we, because of the weekend, couldn't submit May 1st, but are submitting here today on May 3rd, is a departmental budget that includes 10 enterprise departments, PUC, airport, port, departments like that, that also proverbially, not just rhetorically, substantively, rather, fully funds this 10-year capital plan. In this budget, we have over $226 million identified of capital investment for this fiscal year and over $274 million for next fiscal year. And this was an important thing I just said, not just the money, but the fact that this budget is a 2-year budget that we're submitting. 3 departments are part of our pilot. Again, part of additional reforms that I wanted to highlight today, where we're doing 2-year budgets for the city. You may recall that Muni has a 2-year budget, but no other departments had 2-year budgets. This year will be the first year where we have multiple departments with 2-year budgets. And that is a significant, again, departure from business as usual. Where did this come from? Well, this came from something else that I think deserves a tremendous amount of attention. And that is an initiation of a report that goes back about 18 or so months when Ben Rosenfield, our controller, and his team were tasked with putting together a best practice report of financial planning and strategic planning and just best budget planning for our city. They went out and they put a report together. In that report were included a number of things that went forward not only through the Board of Supervisors with their support, and David Chu and others were particularly enthusiastic about them, but eventually made their way to the ballot, Proposition A, that requires now 2-year budgets, changed the framework of the governance structure, the charter in the city, where now it's required, and also requires 5-year financial plans. Where we get the 2-year budget, well, we get it from that 5-year financial planning element. Again, now we have not only pay-as-you-go, a rainy day reserve, not only do we have strategic plans that were required in the city, but now we have 5-year financial plans. The 10-year capital plan has been codified and reinforced, and now 2-year budgets. I think this is a big deal. I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to understate it, because I think most San Franciscans don't even know this about our city. And I think most people outside the city certainly can't imagine San Francisco being the progressive city it is, also being prudent in terms of its budget and making not just short-term investments, but medium and long-term investments. Let me underscore some of the other investments that are being reconciled, or rather advanced and reconciled to some degree in the legislation I just signed. I signed 3 other pieces of legislation today, just moments ago, to advance our commitment to improving our water system and our wastewater system. In fact, over $679 million, I'll repeat that, $679 million of supplemental appropriation I just signed that will create over 12,000 jobs. And these are real jobs in the construction sector, to do things as large and small as this, to put a tunnel underneath the bay, the new Bay Tunnel, to put a new tunnel around Sunnydale so we deal with the flooding, to upgrade some of our natural areas, not just in the city, but throughout the region. This, again, part of that water system improvement plan, that $4.6 billion plan to upgrade our aging water system that, again, is a gravity-fed system that comes from Hetchetchee, that 167-mile conveyance system out here into the Bay Area, and provides water for roughly 2.4 million customers. Even, again, outside the jurisdiction of the city, the water responsibilities are within our grasp and within our job description through the Public Utilities Commission. So this supplemental is about jobs. The 10-year plan is about jobs. And this budget that we just submitted is about jobs at a time when we need to be focused more than ever, laser-like focus on creating jobs. And so I just wanted to underscore and highlight these things because of the enormity of the dollars that we're committing to and the investment that we are advancing, and also focus on some of our reforms, not least of which this final reform that is also been advanced through legislation I signed last week, and that's the creation of a new budget stabilization fund. This also comes out of that work that the controller did, looking and identifying best practices. What we need to do is we need to be even more strategic than we have been with our rainy day reserve, which was a good start, but we need to capture more of that one-time good news, meaning when you, for example, have an economy that's growing and you have property that's transferring at a high rate, we get property transfer tax. The new budget stabilization fund will go further than our rainy day fund in capturing some of that one-time money. In fact, upwards of 75% of it will be captured in this new budget stabilization fund. That will allow us to have even more robust reserves so that we go from the swing of the good and that we're prepared when things do what they've done in the last few years and that we experience this downturn. This is a significant commitment to the medium and long range financial stability of our city. I got to tell you, of all the pieces of legislation I've signed over the course of the last number of years, getting these 2-year budgets, these 5-year financial plans, on top of the rainy day reserve, on top of our general fund reserve commitments, our 10-year capital plans, our pay-as-you-go strategies, now having a stabilization fund really is, for me, a significant milestone in terms of the budgetary reforms the city has advanced. And it deserves some, I think, attention. It deserves some complimentary reflection to the Board of Supervisors for supporting it, again, to the budget team that I have in the Controller's office and the great work that they've advanced, and to the people of San Francisco for stepping up to the plate. Again, it's part of the story of the city that I don't think gets the kind of attention it deserves, and that's why, again, I'm highlighting it here at my desk to really applaud some of us, or all of us, for stepping up. Is it the panacea? No. Is this as good as it gets? Of course not. But I think it's a significant step in the right direction, and again, a direction that I think most San Franciscans, frankly, aren't familiar with or aware of. So again, laying out an immediate commitment to jobs and economic growth with the supplemental at the PUC, making sure we commit ourselves to 10 years of prudence in terms of investing in our infrastructure, and then creating a brand new framework with a budget stabilization reserve and fund that when the economy turns around, we're going to capture a lot of that good news, and we're going to make sure that we invest it in a reserve that when things turn south, that we're going to have more resources than we otherwise would have. And so that's really the highlights that I wanted to share with you today. This plan, again, is the May 1st plan. We're going to have the June 1st plan, which is the budget for all the general fund departments. In the next few weeks, I'll be finalizing that. And let me thank, in closing, SEIU for making that job a lot easier, because SEIU late on Friday last week agreed to a tentative agreement joining the other public employees unions in contributing some of their salary back in order to keep the doors open for programs and services to the most vulnerable San Franciscans, and to keep some of their colleagues employed, because they're making a contribution that will substantially reduce the number of layoffs in this city. I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud, as always, our public employees unions stepping up to the plate when they're needed the most. They've done it yet again, and so thank you to SEIU, thank you to the PEC, the Public Employees Committee, for their good work, and I look forward to coming back and talking on this weekly video about how proud I am of TWU, because we have this weekend some tough choices that are being forced upon us to be made as it relates to service impacts and service changes. Because we don't have contributions from TWU, our operators. They can do exactly what SEIU and all the other public employees unions have committed to by stepping up to the plate. That could substantially offset the need to move forward with these service changes. And police and fire, I believe, will do the same thing soon. And we'll have all of our family of labor leaders together, helping all of us by working together to get through this very difficult time in terms of our fiscal health in this city. Again, though, a fiscal future, though, that looks bright in terms of the organized governance that we're now advancing and changing. And I am very proud, again, of all the leadership at the board and Controller's office and my own budget team, and Greg Wagner and his team, my chief of staff, for a job well done getting us as far as we've gotten. And I look forward to this economy turning around, these jobs being created because of this paperwork that we just signed, and beginning to focus on lowering that unemployment that continues to vex us here in the city, but continues to be a top priority of this administration and all of the elected officials here at City Hall. Thank you, everybody.